Begin waking in a quiet medieval village with a high fever, your body weak and your breathing growing heavier by the hour. Your family rushes to find the local doctor, believing help has finally arrived. But in medieval Europe, calling for a physician did not always improve your chances of survival. In many cases, the treatment itself could be more dangerous than the illness. Tonight, we'll gently explore why seeking medical care during the Middle Ages could become one of the most. To understand medieval medicine, we must first leave behind everything we know about modern hospitals. There were no antibiotics, no X-rays, no microscopes, and no understanding of bacteria or viruses. Physicians worked with the knowledge available to them, combining ancient Greek ideas, religious beliefs, observation, and centuries of tradition. Many genuinely wanted to heal their patients, yet the scientific tools needed to understand disease simply did not exist. One of the most influential medical theories was known as the four humours. Medieval doctors believed the human body contained four essential fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Good health depended upon these humours remaining perfectly balanced. If illness appeared, physicians assumed one humour had become too strong or too weak. Nearly every treatment they offered attempted to restore this invisible balance, even though the theory itself was completely incorrect. This belief shaped almost every medical decision made throughout medieval Europe. A patient suffering from fever might receive a completely different treatment from someone with stomach pain, not because doctors understood the disease itself, but because they believed different humours had become unbalanced. From today's perspective, these methods appear unusual, yet at the time they represented the very best medical knowledge available to educated physicians. As our quiet journey begins, remember that medieval doctors were rarely cruel or careless people. Most sincerely hoped to save lives using the knowledge inherited from earlier civilizations. The tragedy was not a lack of compassion, it was a lack of scientific understanding. Throughout tonight's peaceful exploration, we'll discover how these well-intentioned treatments sometimes caused more suffering than the illnesses they were meant to cure, revealing one of history's most fascinating. For most ordinary villagers, a visit to the doctor was not the first choice but the last. Medical treatment was expensive. Physicians were uncommon outside large towns, and many families simply could not afford their services. People often waited until an illness became severe before seeking help. By then, a simple infection or fever might already have become life-threatening. The doctor would arrive carrying years of learning, yet very little knowledge that could truly stop the disease itself. A medieval physician rarely began treatment by examining the illness in the way a modern doctor would. Instead, he carefully observed the patient's face, skin color, breathing, pulse, and even the appearance of urine, believing these signs revealed which of the body's humours had fallen out of balance. Some doctors even consulted handwritten medical charts before offering advice. Their methods appeared logical for the time, although the conclusions they reached were often tragically mistaken. Astrology also played a surprising role in medieval medicine. Many physicians believed the movements of the moon and planets influenced the human body. Before performing certain procedures, they sometimes checked astronomical tables to determine whether the heavens were favorable. A treatment could be delayed simply because the stars were thought to be in the wrong position. Today, this may seem unusual, but for educated doctors of the Middle Ages, astronomy and medicine were closely connected. Religion shaped medical practice just as strongly as science. Illness was often viewed as a spiritual trial, a punishment for sin, or a test of faith. Alongside medicines and treatments, patients were encouraged to pray, confess, visit holy shrines, or seek blessings from priests. Many people believed healing came from both God and the physician together. Medicine and religion were not separate worlds, but two paths that families hoped would lead them back to health. Even after the physician completed his examination, uncertainty remained. Without laboratories, microscopes, or any understanding of bacteria, every diagnosis depended largely upon observation, experience, and inherited beliefs. Two patients with nearly identical symptoms might receive completely different treatments from different doctors. As our journey continues, we'll soon discover the procedure that became one of the most famous and most dangerous medical practices of the medieval. Not every healer in medieval Europe was a trained physician. Many villages relied upon local wise women, herbal healers, monks, or experienced family members who passed remedies down through generations. They gathered herbs from nearby forests, prepared simple medicines, and cared for the sick with knowledge learned through experience rather than formal education. Sometimes these treatments provided comfort, while other times they proved no more effective than the illnesses they. For wealthy families, calling an educated physician could become a symbol of status as much as a search for healing. These doctors often studied at famous universities where they learned the writings of ancient scholars such as Hippocrates and Galen. Their education earned respect throughout society. Yet even the finest medical training remained limited by the scientific knowledge available during the Middle Ages. Experience alone could not replace discoveries that had not yet been made. Fear often spread through a household long before the doctor arrived. Family members watched helplessly as a loved one's fever climbed high or breathing became weaker with every passing hour. They placed their hopes upon a physician carrying leather bags filled with instruments, herbs, handwritten notes, and remedies believed to restore health. Each knock upon the door brought both relief and uncertainty, because no one truly knew whether the treatment would save a life or place it. Children faced especially difficult circumstances whenever illness entered the home. Their smaller bodies struggled against infections that modern medicine now treats with relative ease. Parents searched desperately for anything that might help, following the physician's advice with complete trust because there were few alternatives. Every remedy represented hope, even when history now tells us that many of those treatments offered little real protection against disease. As our quiet journey gently continues, we begin to understand that medieval medicine was built upon sincere effort rather than reliable evidence. Doctors observed carefully, studied diligently, and wished to heal those who suffered, yet without understanding bacteria, infection, or the true causes of disease. Even the most confident treatments could bring unexpected tragedy. In the next chapter, we'll explore the medical beliefs that guided every physician and discover why so many intelligent. Even the doctor's appearance inspired both confidence and fear. Many physicians wore long robes, carried carefully bound medical books, and traveled with leather satchels filled with herbs, knives, jars, and handwritten notes. To frighten families, these objects represented hope itself. Yet beneath this image of knowledge lay an uncomfortable truth. The doctor possessed great confidence, but many of the treatments inside his bag were based on theories that science would later prove. Communication between doctor and patient also differed greatly from modern medicine. Physicians asked detailed questions about diet, sleep, emotions, and even the season of the year, believing each could influence the body's balance. They carefully observed every answer before deciding upon a treatment. Although their reasoning often followed logical patterns, those conclusions rested upon assumptions that misunderstood the true causes of infection, disease, and recovery. Travel itself could become another obstacle to survival. During harsh winters or heavy storms, a physician might need many hours or even an entire day to reach an isolated village. By the time help finally arrived, the patient's condition could have changed dramatically. Families waited anxiously beside the bedside, hoping every passing hour would not be their loved one's last. Sometimes the illness progressed faster than any doctor, no matter how experienced, could possibly respond. Looking back through the lens of modern history, it is easy to judge medieval medicine harshly. Yet these physicians worked without microscopes, laboratory testing, or centuries of scientific discoveries that guide healthcare today. They relied upon observation, tradition, respected scholars, and sincere belief that their methods would heal the sick. Their greatest limitation was never compassion or dedication. It was simply the absence of knowledge that had not yet been discovered. Our first chapter now comes quietly to its close. We have entered a world where illness brought uncertainty, where families placed their hopes in treatments that often carried hidden dangers, and where even the most respected doctors struggled against diseases they could not truly understand. In the next chapter, we will step inside the fascinating beliefs that shaped medieval medicine itself, exploring the ancient theories that guided every diagnosis and every decision. As we quietly continue our journey, let us step inside the mind of a medieval physician. To understand why their treatments often failed, we must first understand what they believed about the human body itself. Unlike modern medicine, medieval doctors did not think illness came from invisible germs or harmful bacteria. Instead, they believed disease appeared when the body's natural balance had been disturbed, a belief that shaped nearly every diagnosis and treatment for hundreds of years. This idea came from the teachings of ancient Greek physicians, especially Hippocrates and Galen, whose writings remained the foundation of European medicine throughout the Middle Ages. Their books were copied by hand, studied in universities, and respected almost without question. Medieval doctors believed these ancient scholars had already discovered the secrets of health, leaving little reason to challenge their conclusions through careful scientific experimentation. At the center of medieval medicine stood the famous theory of the four humors. Physicians believed every human body contained four essential fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Good health depended upon these humors remaining in perfect balance. Whenever someone became ill, doctors assumed that one of these fluids had increased or decreased beyond its proper amount, creating an imbalance that needed to be corrected as quickly as possible. Each humor was believed to possess its own unique qualities. Light represented warmth and moisture. Phlegm was considered cold and wet. Yellow bile was hot and dry, while black bile was cold and dry. Doctors carefully matched every symptom to these qualities before deciding upon a treatment. A fever, for example, might suggest excessive heat inside the body, leading physicians to recommend methods designed to cool the patient according to humoral theory. Although modern science has shown that the four humors theory was incorrect, it remained remarkably influential for more than 1,000 years. Physicians trusted it because generations of respected scholars had accepted it. Universities continued teaching it, and few practical alternatives existed. In the medieval world, questioning such deeply established beliefs was uncommon, allowing this ancient medical system to guide countless treatments across Europe for centuries. Medieval physicians believed that every person was born with a natural temperament determined by the balance of the four humors. Someone with an abundance of blood was thought to be cheerful and energetic, while a person believed to have too much black bile might appear quiet or sorrowful. Illness and personality were therefore closely connected in medieval medicine. Doctors often considered a patient's emotions, behavior, and even appearance before deciding which humor they believed had fallen. The changing seasons also played an important role in medieval medical thinking. Spring was associated with blood, summer with yellow bile, autumn with black bile, and winter with phlegm. Physicians believed the weather itself could influence the body's internal balance, making certain illnesses more common during particular times of the year. Treatments were often adjusted according to the season, reflecting the belief that both nature and the human body followed the same harmonious rhythm. Food was considered one of the most powerful forms of medicine. Every meal was believed to possess its own qualities of heat, cold, dryness, or moisture. A doctor might advise a patient with a fever to avoid foods considered hot, while someone suffering from chills could be encouraged to eat warming meals or drink spiced wine. Although these recommendations were based on humoral theory rather than scientific nutrition, they influenced daily life throughout medieval Europe. Medieval doctors also believed that clean, fresh air could help restore health, while foul-smelling air, known as miasma, was thought to spread disease. They encouraged patients to open windows, burn fragrant herbs, or carry sweet-smelling flowers to protect themselves from harmful vapors. While the true cause of infection remained unknown, these practices reflected an earnest attempt to understand why sickness seemed to spread through towns and villages during outbreaks of disease. As our peaceful exploration continues, we begin to see that medieval medicine was built upon a carefully organized system of beliefs rather than random guesses. Every diagnosis, every herbal remedy, and every medical procedure followed rules that physicians considered logical and trustworthy. Yet one treatment above all others became the defining symbol of this ancient medical tradition. In our next chapter, we will discover the practice of bloodletting, a cure so common that it was used. Medical knowledge during the Middle Ages was deeply connected to the natural world. Physicians believed that every plant, mineral, and animal possessed unique qualities that could influence the body's balance. A simple herb growing beside a village path might be prescribed to cool an overheated patient, while another was thought to warm a body weakened by cold humors. These remedies were carefully selected according to tradition, not because their effects had been tested through. The physician's library was often considered just as valuable as his medical instruments. Thick handwritten manuscripts preserved the teachings of respected scholars whose ideas had survived for centuries. Rather than questioning these authorities, medieval doctors usually accepted their words as reliable truth. Learning meant studying ancient texts, memorizing established principles, and applying them faithfully. Original scientific investigation remained uncommon. Observation played an important role in every consultation. Doctors carefully examined a patient's skin, eyes, tongue, pulse, and breathing, searching for visible clues that might reveal an imbalance of the humors. They also asked detailed questions about sleep, appetite, digestion, and recent activities. Although these examinations were thoughtful and systematic, physicians interpreted what they saw through a medical framework that misunderstood the true biological causes. Urine examination became one of the most trusted diagnostic methods in medieval Europe. Physicians collected a patient's urine inside a clear glass flask and carefully studied its color, clarity, smell, and even tiny particles floating within it. Medical books contain detailed illustrations describing what different shades might reveal about the body's condition. While certain observations occasionally reflected genuine health problems, many conclusions remained guided by humoral theory. As we quietly leave the physician's study behind, we begin to understand why medieval medicine remained so convincing to those who practiced it. Every diagnosis followed an organized system supported by respected teachers, carefully copied books, and centuries of tradition. To medieval doctors, these beliefs explained almost every illness they encountered, yet one treatment soon became more common than any other. In our next chapter, we will witness the practice of bloodletting, a procedure. Another important belief guided almost every medieval physician. The human body and the universe were thought to exist in perfect harmony. Doctors believed that the same natural laws governing the seasons, the planets, and the elements also controlled human health. If nature fell out of balance, the body could suffer as well. Restoring health therefore meant restoring harmony between the patient and the wider world, an idea that influenced medicine throughout medieval Europe for centuries. As we continue our peaceful journey through medieval medicine, we arrive at a treatment that became almost legendary throughout Europe. It was recommended for fevers, headaches, infections, stomach pain, breathing difficulties, and countless other illnesses. The treatment was known as bloodletting, a procedure based on the belief that removing blood could restore the body's natural balance. For hundreds of years, physicians trusted this method with remarkable confidence, never imagining that the idea behind bloodletting came directly from the theory of the four humors. Since blood was considered one of the body's essential fluids, doctors believed that too much blood could produce heat, fever, swelling, or other signs of illness. By carefully removing what they thought was the excess, physicians hoped to restore harmony inside the body. To medieval doctors, the treatment followed sound medical reasoning, even though modern science has shown that this assumption was. Before beginning the procedure, the physician carefully examined the patient and decided which vein should be opened. Medieval medical books even included detailed illustrations showing different veins for different illnesses. A headache might require blood to be taken from one part of the arm, while another condition called for a different location. These decisions were not random. They followed carefully organized rules that doctors believed had been proven through centuries. The procedure itself was usually performed using a small, extremely sharp blade called a lancet. After selecting the vein, the physician made a careful incision, allowing blood to flow into a waiting bowl or cloth. Throughout the process, the doctor closely observed the patient's appearance, believing that the amount and color of the blood offered valuable clues about the illness. Although the treatment appeared calm and methodical, it often weakened patients who were already dangerously ill. For many medieval families, watching bloodletting inspired both hope and fear. The physician worked with quiet confidence, believing each drop of blood carried the illness away from the body. Relatives stood nearby, trusting the doctor's experience and praying for recovery, yet without knowing about infection, dehydration, or the body's need to maintain healthy blood volume. This trusted treatment sometimes reduced a patient's strength at the very moment it was needed most. Timing was considered almost as important as the procedure itself. Many medieval physicians consulted astronomical charts before performing bloodletting, believing that the position of the moon influenced the movement of blood within the human body. Certain days were thought to be favorable, while others were considered dangerous. If the stars appeared unfavorable, treatment might be postponed, even when the patient was seriously ill. Medicine and astrology remained closely connected throughout. The amount of blood removed depended upon the patient's age, physical strength, and the illness being treated. Experienced physicians believed they could judge exactly how much blood should leave the body before balance was restored. Unfortunately, without understanding circulation or blood pressure, these decisions relied almost entirely upon observation and tradition. Patients already weakened by fever or infection sometimes lost strength rather than regaining it, making recovery even more. Not every bloodletting procedure was performed by a university-trained physician. In many towns and villages, the task was often carried out by barber surgeons, whose daily work included cutting hair, shaving beards, pulling teeth, and performing minor surgical procedures. Their practical skills made them valuable members of medieval society, yet the instruments they used could rarely be sterilized. This greatly increased the risk of infection, even when the procedure itself was carefully. Leeches also became a familiar part of medieval medicine. These small freshwater creatures were placed upon the patient's skin, where they naturally attached themselves and slowly drew blood. Physicians believed leeches offered a gentle way to remove excess blood from the body, particularly from delicate areas where using a blade seemed more dangerous. Although modern medicine still uses sterile medical leeches in a few specialized treatments, medieval doctors applied them according to herbal. For centuries, bloodletting remained one of Europe's most trusted medical treatments because patients occasionally recovered afterward. Physicians naturally believed the procedure deserved the credit, even though many illnesses simply improved on their own. When patients survived, bloodletting appeared successful. When they died, the disease itself was usually blamed rather than the treatment. Without controlled scientific studies, this powerful misunderstanding allowed bloodletting to remain. Bloodletting was not reserved only for serious illnesses. Medieval physicians prescribed it for headaches, persistent coughs, indigestion, skin diseases, gout, high fevers, and even emotional distress. Because the four humors theory explained nearly every illness as an imbalance within the body, removing blood appeared to be a logical solution for countless conditions. As a result, patients from every level of society, from humble villagers to powerful kings, underwent this procedure with. Medical texts often contain detailed illustrations showing exactly where a vein should be opened for particular illnesses. Physicians believed different parts of the body were connected to specific organs, and selecting the correct vein greatly influenced the treatment's success. Students carefully memorized these diagrams during their education, trusting generations of respected teachers. Although these anatomical maps appeared highly organized, many patients accepted bloodletting without hesitation because they had witnessed neighbors recover after receiving the treatment. In reality, some illnesses naturally improve with time, allowing the body to heal on its own. When recovery followed bloodletting, both the physician and the patient believed the procedure had cured the disease. This powerful misunderstanding reinforced confidence in the practice, helping it remain one of Europe's most trusted medical treatments for many centuries. The greatest danger often appeared when already weakened patients lost even more blood. Someone suffering from severe fever, pneumonia, or serious infection required every remaining strength to survive. Yet physicians believed removing blood would restore balance rather than reduce the body's ability to recover. Without understanding oxygen, circulation, or the immune system, doctors unknowingly made some patients more vulnerable at the very moment they needed strength the most. Despite these risks, it would be unfair to imagine medieval physicians acting without compassion. They carefully followed the medical knowledge available in their own time and sincerely believed bloodletting offered the best chance of recovery. Few questioned a treatment that had been taught in universities, recommended by famous scholars, and practiced across Europe for generations. In the medieval world, as centuries passed, bloodletting became so deeply accepted that many patients actually expected their doctor to recommend it. Refusing the procedure sometimes created doubt about a physician's ability, because families believed that removing blood demonstrated both knowledge and experience. This widespread trust made the treatment even more powerful. Once a medical practice becomes part of everyday culture, it can continue for generations, even when its true effectiveness is rarely. Some physicians attempted to perform bloodletting with remarkable precision. They carefully selected the season, considered the patient's age, observed physical strength, and even measure the amount of blood flowing into a waiting bowl. Every decision followed established medical traditions that had been copied into manuscripts for hundreds of years. To modern eyes, the procedure may appear misguided, yet within the intellectual world of medieval Europe it represented careful, educated. History reminds us that even well-intentioned treatments can become dangerous when built upon incorrect ideas. Medieval doctors genuinely wished to relieve pain and save lives, but they lacked the scientific discoveries that later transformed medicine. Without knowledge of bacteria, blood circulation, oxygen, or infection, they could not recognize when bloodletting weakened the body's natural defenses. Their confidence reflected the limits of their era, rather than a lack of compassion or... Interestingly, bloodletting survived far beyond the Middle Ages. Even during the 17th and 18th centuries, many respected European physicians continued using the practice for a wide variety of illnesses. It was only after scientific research, improved anatomy, and careful clinical observation began challenging long-held assumptions that confidence in bloodletting slowly declined. This long history reminds us how difficult it can be for deeply rooted medical traditions to change. As we quietly leave the physician's chamber behind, the bowl of collected blood serves as a powerful reminder of both human curiosity and human limitation. Medieval doctors believed they were restoring balance, while modern medicine reveals how easily sincere intentions can be guided by incomplete knowledge. Our journey now continues toward another fascinating chapter, where we will discover the strange medicines, mysterious ingredients, and unusual remedies that physicians prepared. As our quiet journey through medieval medicine continues, we now step inside the physician's apothecary, where shelves were filled with jars, dried herbs, powders, oils, and mysterious ingredients gathered from forests, mountains, and distant lands. Every remedy carried the promise of healing, yet many contained substances that modern medicine now recognizes as dangerous. Patients trusted these carefully prepared mixtures completely, believing they offered the best hope of recovery in an herbal medicine formed the foundation of many medieval treatments. Plants such as sage, rosemary, mint, fennel, and chamomile were carefully collected, dried, and mixed into teas, pastes, or healing tonics. Some of these herbs genuinely possessed mild medicinal properties and occasionally brought comfort to the sick. However, physicians often combined them with other ingredients whose harmful effects were completely unknown, turning an otherwise gentle remedy into something far less. Among the most surprising medicines used during the Middle Ages was mercury, a shimmering metal that fascinated physicians for centuries. Because it seemed powerful and unusual, doctors believed it could drive illness from the body. Mercury was prescribed for skin diseases, infections, and numerous other conditions despite its hidden toxicity. Patients sometimes experienced severe poisoning without realizing the medicine itself had become the source of their suffering rather than the cure. Lead also found its way into certain medieval remedies, cosmetics, and medical preparations. Physicians had no understanding of heavy metal poisoning, so its dangerous effects remained invisible to them. Small amounts consumed repeatedly could gradually damage the body, causing weakness, stomach pain, confusion, and lasting illness. Because these symptoms often appeared slowly, doctors rarely connected them to the medicines they had prescribed, allowing the practice to continue for generations. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of medieval medicine was the confidence placed in remedies that had never been scientifically tested. Treatments were accepted because respected teachers recommended them, ancient books described them, or generations of physicians continued using them without question. Patients believed these medicines represented centuries of wisdom, unaware that some of the very ingredients intended to restore health could quietly place their lives in even greater danger. Not every remedy came from plants or minerals alone. Medieval apothecaries sometimes included ingredients that seem astonishing today, including powdered animal bones, bird shells, crushed insects, animal fat, and even dried organs. Physicians believed each substance possessed unique healing qualities that could restore the body's natural balance. These remedies reflected centuries of inherited tradition rather than scientific testing, and patients accepted them with complete trust. Another common ingredient was honey, valued not only for its sweetness, but also for its remarkable ability to preserve food and soothe wounds. Medieval doctors frequently mixed honey with herbs to create syrups, ointments, and medicinal drinks. Modern science has confirmed that honey possesses natural antibacterial properties, making it one of the few medieval remedies that occasionally provided genuine medical benefits. Even so, its effectiveness was often overshadowed when combined. The quality of medicine varied greatly from one town to another. Wealthy cities sometimes employed experienced apothecaries who carefully prepared remedies according to respected medical texts. In smaller villages, however, ingredients could be scarce, poorly stored, or incorrectly identified. A single mistake in collecting or preparing herbs might transform a harmless medicine into a dangerous mixture. Without standardized testing or regulation, patients rarely knew exactly what they. Storage created another hidden danger. Medicines were often kept in wooden boxes, clay jars, or glass containers exposed to changing temperatures and moisture. Herbs gradually lost their strength, oils spoiled, and powders became contaminated by insects or mold. Because medieval physicians had no knowledge of bacteria or chemical stability, they usually believed an old remedy remained just as effective as the day it had been prepared. This misunderstanding sometimes reduced a medicine's value. As we gently leave the apothecary behind, we begin to understand that medieval medicine was a fascinating mixture of careful observation, inherited wisdom, and unfortunate misconceptions. Some remedies truly offered comfort, while others unknowingly placed patients in greater danger. The challenge was that no reliable scientific method existed to separate effective treatments from harmful ones. In our next chapter, we will step into one of the most frightening experiences imaginable. Some medieval remedies were so unusual that they sound almost unbelievable today. Physicians occasionally recommended powdered gemstones, believing precious minerals carried hidden healing powers. Others prescribed ground pearls, coral, or even fragments of ivory, especially for wealthy patients who could afford such expensive treatments. These rare ingredients symbolized purity and strength rather than proven medical effectiveness. Their use reflected the belief that nature had placed healing. Exotic ingredients arriving through long-distance trade fascinated medieval apothecaries. Cinnamon, cloves, ginger, frankincense, myrrh, and other costly spices traveled thousands of miles before reaching European markets. Doctors believed these rare substances possessed extraordinary healing abilities because they came from distant and mysterious lands. While some spices did contain mild antibacterial or anti-inflammatory properties, physicians often exaggerated their medical value. Preparing medicine required patience as well as precision. Herbs were carefully dried, roots crushed into fine powders, and liquids slowly heated over gentle fires before being mixed together. Every recipe followed instructions copied from handwritten medical manuscripts that had been trusted for generations. Yet even the most careful preparation could not guarantee success, because physicians still misunderstood the true causes of disease. Beautifully crafted remedies often treated imagined. Patients rarely questioned the medicines placed before them. A colorful powder, a fragrant syrup, or a bitter herbal drink inspired confidence simply because it had been prepared by an educated physician or respected apothecary. The stronger the taste or stranger the ingredients, the more powerful the remedy sometimes appeared. This natural trust encouraged people to continue using treatments whose effectiveness depended more upon tradition and hope than upon reliable medical knowledge. Some remedies owed their popularity not to medical success, but to the power of reputation. When a respected physician, monastery, or university recommended a particular medicine, people trusted it without hesitation. Families passed these recipes from one generation to the next, believing that centuries of use proved their value. In reality, many treatments survived because no reliable method existed to compare successful recoveries with unsuccessful ones, allowing tradition. The medieval apothecary served as far more than a place where medicines were prepared. It was a center of knowledge, conversation, and quiet hope. Patients arrived carrying fear, uncertainty, and desperate questions, while physicians searched shelves lined with herbs, oils, powders, and handwritten recipes for the best available remedy. Every carefully measured mixture reflected genuine effort and compassion, even when the understanding behind the treatment remained incomplete. Modern historians often remind us that it is important not to judge medieval physicians too harshly. They worked in a world without microscopes, laboratory testing, chemistry, or microbiology. Every decision they made depended upon observation, inherited wisdom, and respected authorities. While many remedies now appear unusual or even dangerous, they represented sincere attempts to relieve suffering using the limited knowledge available during one of history's most challenging periods. Ironically, a handful of medieval remedies did provide real benefits, although doctors rarely understood why they worked. Honey could help protect wounds. Willow bark contained natural compounds related to modern aspirin, and certain herbs eased digestion or reduced mild inflammation. These successes encouraged even greater confidence in medieval medicine as a whole, making it much harder to recognize which treatments genuinely helped patients and which quietly caused additional harm. As the candles inside the apothecary slowly burned lower, we leave behind shelves filled with hope, mystery, and centuries of medical tradition. Strange medicines reflected humanity's endless desire to overcome illness, even when the answers remained hidden beyond the knowledge of the age. Our peaceful journey now moves toward one of the most difficult experiences imaginable in medieval Europe: surgery without anesthesia, where courage, endurance, and trust became a patient's greatest companions. As our peaceful journey through medieval medicine continues, we now enter one of the most feared places in the entire Middle Ages, a room where surgery was performed without the comfort of modern anesthesia. Imagine lying upon a rough wooden table, fully awake, while a surgeon prepared his instruments nearby. There were no injections to block pain, no gentle sleep brought by anesthetic drugs, and no machines to monitor the patient. For many people, the operation itself became a greater source. Medieval surgery was usually considered a last resort. Physicians preferred herbal remedies, special diets, or bloodletting whenever possible, because opening the human body carried enormous risks. Only when an injury became severe, a wound turned dangerously infected, or a broken bone could no longer heal properly, did surgery become unavoidable. Patients understood that agreeing to an operation meant placing their lives entirely in the hands of a surgeon whose courage often exceeded the medical. The surgeon's tools were surprisingly simple: sharp knives, iron saws, hooks, forceps, needles, and heated metal instruments rested upon wooden tables, ready for use. Each instrument had been carefully crafted by skilled metalworkers, yet none could be properly sterilized, because the existence of bacteria remained completely unknown. Even the cleanest-looking blade might carry invisible contamination, making infection one of the greatest dangers every patient silently faced after an operation. Without anesthesia, controlling pain became one of the surgeon's greatest challenges. Patients were sometimes given strong wine, ale, or herbal mixtures containing ingredients such as poppy or mandrake in the hope of making them drowsy. These remedies occasionally reduced anxiety, but they rarely removed pain completely. Most remained awake throughout the procedure, relying upon extraordinary determination, while family members or assistants helped hold them still during the operation. Speed became one of the surgeon's most valuable skills. Every extra moment increased pain, blood loss, and the risk of complications. Experienced surgeons practiced working quickly while maintaining careful control of their instruments, knowing that hesitation could endanger both the procedure and the patient's survival. In the medieval world, a fast and confident surgeon earned great respect, not because the operation was painless, but because every second saved offered the patient a slightly. Operations usually took place in surroundings that would seem unfamiliar to a modern patient. Instead of brightly lit operating rooms, surgery was often performed inside homes, monasteries, castles, or small workshops where natural daylight provided the only reliable source of illumination. Dust drifted through the air. Wooden tables served as operating surfaces, and clean water was limited. Although surgeons tried to keep their tools orderly, they had no understanding that invisible, broken bones presented another enormous challenge. A badly fractured arm or leg had to be carefully pulled back into alignment before wooden splints and tightly wrapped cloth held it in place. Every movement caused intense pain because no effective anesthesia existed to dull the patient's senses. Surgeons relied upon steady hands, practical experience, and remarkable patience, hoping the bones would heal correctly despite the constant danger of infection, swelling, or permanent disability. Amputations became one of the most feared procedures in medieval Europe. When a limb suffered irreversible injury, severe infection, or gangrene, removing it sometimes offered the patient's only chance of survival. Surgeons worked as rapidly as possible, aware that every passing second increased blood loss and unbearable pain. Assistants firmly supported the patient throughout the operation, while family members often waited outside, hoping the difficult decision would preserve the life. Despite the suffering these operations caused, successful surgery occasionally transformed a person's future. A wound that might otherwise have become fatal could heal. A shattered bone could slowly regain strength, and an infected limb removed in time might spare a patient's life. These rare successes earned experienced surgeons great respect throughout medieval society. Yet every operation remained a dangerous balance between hope and uncertainty, reminding both doctor and patient how limited. After an operation had ended, the greatest danger was often only beginning. Surgeons carefully wrapped wounds with linen bandages, applied herbal ointments, or covered injuries with honey and natural oils believed to encourage healing. Although some of these remedies occasionally helped protect damaged tissue, physicians had no understanding of bacteria or infection. A wound that initially appeared successful could quietly become inflamed days later, turning hope into renewed fear for both. Recovery demanded extraordinary patience. Patients were expected to remain still for long periods while damaged bones, muscles, and skin slowly repaired themselves. Family members provided food, fresh water, and constant care, knowing that even a small fever might signal a dangerous infection. Every morning brought cautious optimism, yet every evening reminded them that healing remained uncertain. Without antibiotics or modern nursing, survival often depended as much upon good fortune. The reputation of a skilled surgeon spread quickly across medieval towns and villages. Families sometimes traveled many miles, seeking someone known for steady hands and successful operations. Experience mattered greatly because practical knowledge could not always be found in books alone. A surgeon who had treated dozens of difficult injuries often earned enormous respect within the community. Even so, every operation remained unpredictable, reminding everyone that human skills still face. Pain did not disappear when the operation ended. During the days that followed, patients continued to endure aching wounds, swelling, stiffness, and exhaustion while their bodies struggled to heal. Herbal drinks, warm compresses, and quiet rest offered the only comfort available. Every small improvement brought relief, while every unexpected complication renewed anxiety throughout the household. Healing was measured not in hours, but in weeks, requiring remarkable endurance from both patients. As we quietly leave the medieval operating room behind, we gain a deeper appreciation for the courage shown by both surgeons and patients. They faced each procedure without the medical knowledge, pain relief, or sterile techniques that modern hospitals consider essential today. Many operations failed, yet others saved lives against extraordinary odds. In our next chapter, we will meet the remarkable barber surgeons, craftsmen who cut hair, shaved beards, pulled teeth, and performed surgery all. Not every operation involved dramatic injuries or life-threatening emergencies. Medieval surgeons also removed painful cysts, drained infected abscesses, stitched deep cuts, and treated broken noses caused by accidents or fighting. Even these smaller procedures demanded remarkable courage because every incision brought pain, bleeding, and the constant risk of infection. What appears routine today often became a frightening experience for patients living hundreds of years ago. Surgeons depended heavily upon their assistants during every operation. Strong hands were needed to steady the patient, pass instruments, hold oil lamps, and control bleeding whenever possible. Without trained nurses or modern surgical teams, success relied upon careful cooperation between everyone present. Each person understood that a single mistake, a sudden movement, or a moment of hesitation could quickly turn a difficult operation into a tragic outcome. The greatest enemy after surgery was often infection rather than the injury itself. A wound that looked clean on the day of the operation could become swollen, painful, and filled with infection only a few days later. Because medieval doctors knew nothing about bacteria, they could not prevent these invisible dangers. Patients often believed the illness had returned, never realizing that tiny unseen organisms were quietly causing the body to weaken. Even so, medieval surgery slowly improved through observation and experience. Skilled surgeons remembered which techniques seemed to help, which herbs soothed wounds, and which bandages protected healing skin more effectively. Although they lacked scientific explanations, careful practice gradually made certain procedures safer than they had been in earlier centuries. Their progress reminds us that experience can sometimes move knowledge forward, even before science fully understands. As we quietly leave the surgeon's chamber, we carry with us a deeper respect for those who faced operations with nothing but determination and hope. Medieval surgery was painful, uncertain, and often dangerous, yet it represented humanity's continuing effort to fight disease and injury with the limited knowledge available. In our next chapter, we will meet the barber surgeons, remarkable craftsmen who combined everyday grooming with some of medieval Europe's most demanding medical procedures. As our quiet journey through medieval medicine continues, we meet one of the most unusual professionals of the Middle Ages, the barber surgeon. Today, it seems impossible to imagine that the same person who trimmed beards and cut hair could also remove teeth, stitch deep wounds, drain painful infections, and even amputate damaged limbs. Yet across medieval Europe, this remarkable combination of trades became an ordinary part of daily life, trusted by both wealthy nobles and humble. The profession developed because university-trained physicians rarely performed physical operations themselves. They focused on diagnosing illness, studying ancient medical texts, and prescribing treatments, while practical procedures were left to barber surgeons. These skilled craftsmen worked with their hands every day, becoming highly experienced in treating visible injuries. Although they received far less formal education than physicians, their practical knowledge offered them first medical. A barber surgeon's workshop was rarely quiet. Throughout the day, customers arrived for haircuts, beard trimming, tooth extractions, wound treatment, bloodletting, and countless other practical services. The same sturdy wooden chair might hold a gentleman requesting a careful shave in the morning, and an injured laborer requiring urgent medical attention only hours later. In medieval towns, this busy workplace served as both a neighborhood barbershop. The familiar red and white barber pole seen outside many modern barber shops has its origins in this remarkable profession. Historians believe the red stripes symbolized flowing blood, while the white represented clean bandages wrapped around healing wounds. Patients often gripped a wooden staff during bloodletting, helping veins become more visible as the procedure was performed. Over time, these everyday medical practices became permanently linked with the identity of barber surgeons. Despite their unusual responsibilities, many barber surgeons earned deep respect within their communities. They treated injuries caused by farming accidents, hunting, workshop tools, and local conflicts, often responding far more quickly than a physician could arrive. Success depended less upon ancient theories and more upon practical experience gained through years of daily work. Their steady hands, calm judgment, and willingness to act made them indispensable members of medieval society. Barber surgeons learned their trade through long apprenticeships rather than university lectures. Young apprentices spent years observing experienced masters, sharpening instruments, preparing bandages, and assisting during difficult procedures. Day after day, they gained practical knowledge by treating real patients instead of studying only ancient books. Their education depended upon careful observation, steady hands, and countless hours of practice rather than formal medical theory. Tooth extraction became one of the barber surgeon's most common duties. Without fillings, root canals, or antibiotics, a badly infected tooth often caused unbearable pain. The quickest solution was simply to remove it. Using strong iron forceps, the barber surgeon gripped the damaged tooth and pulled with controlled force. The procedure lasted only moments. Yet patients remembered the pain long after the bleeding had stopped. Barber surgeons also cared for soldiers returning from battle with cuts, broken bones, and deep wounds. Working quickly, they cleaned visible dirt, stitched torn skin, and wrapped injuries with linen bandages. Although they lacked knowledge of bacteria, their practical experience sometimes prevented wounds from becoming even worse. In times of war, these craftsmen became essential figures whose skill often determined whether an injured soldier survived. Bloodletting remained one of the barber surgeon's most requested services. Patients visited believing that removing blood would cure headaches, fevers, swelling, or countless other illnesses. The barber surgeon prepared a sharp blade, selected the proper vein according to accepted medical practice, and completed the procedure with practiced confidence. To the people of medieval Europe, This routine treatment represented trusted healthcare rather than dangerous experimentation. Despite their valuable skills, barber surgeons understood the limits of their profession. Extremely complex illnesses were often referred to university-trained physicians, while everyday injuries remained their responsibility. Together, these two professions formed the foundation of medieval healthcare. One relied upon scholarly learning, the other upon practical experience. Both sincerely hoped to heal their patients, yet both remained limited by the scientific knowledge of their age. Many barber surgeons traveled from village to village, carrying their instruments inside sturdy leather bags. In places without a permanent physician, their arrival often attracted long lines of waiting patients. Some needed painful teeth removed, while others sought treatment for cuts, burns, or infected wounds. Their visits became important events, bringing rare medical assistance to communities that otherwise had little access to professional care. The instruments of a barber surgeon reflected practicality rather than elegance. Iron razors, forceps, knives, needles, and small saws were used repeatedly throughout the day. Although these tools were cleaned with water or cloth after each procedure, the idea of sterilization did not yet exist. Invisible bacteria remained unknown, allowing infections to spread despite the barber surgeon's genuine effort to keep his equipment as clean as possible. Trust played a vital role in every treatment. Patients often recognized the barber surgeon as a familiar face within the community rather than a distant scholar. Years of serving neighbors built strong personal relationships, making frightened families more willing to accept difficult procedures. A calm voice, steady hands, and honest reputation sometimes reassured patients as much as the treatment itself, especially during painful operations that demanded remarkable courage. Payment for treatment was not always made with coins. In smaller villages, patients sometimes offered bread, grain, eggs, cheese, cloth, or firewood in exchange for medical care. This simple system reflected the rural economy of medieval Europe, where practical goods often held greater value than money. Barber surgeons accepted these everyday items because helping the community also ensured their own livelihood throughout the changing seasons. As we quietly leave the barber surgeon's busy workshop, we begin to appreciate the remarkable balance between ordinary life and extraordinary responsibility. One moment he trimmed a customer's beard, and the next he might save an injured worker's life. His knowledge came from experience rather than universities, yet his skill earned lasting respect. In the next chapter, we will step inside the medieval hospital and discover what truly awaited patients who entered its doors. Barber surgeons were expected to remain calm even during frightening emergencies. A deep cut from an axe, a crushed hand from farm work, or a serious riding accident demanded quick decisions and steady hands. Villagers gathered outside the workshop, hoping experience would succeed where fear could not. Without modern hospitals or emergency services, these craftsmen often became the first and only source of immediate medical care when disaster suddenly struck. Many barber surgeons built their reputation slowly through years of successful treatments. Families remembered who had saved a neighbor after a farming accident or eased the suffering of an injured child. Good results spread by word of mouth, attracting patients from nearby villages. In a time before printed advertisements or public health systems, trust was earned through practical skill, honesty, and the confidence inspired by steady hands during difficult moments. Although barber surgeons performed impressive practical work, they rarely understood why wounds sometimes healed quickly while others became dangerously infected. Two patients with similar injuries could receive nearly identical treatment, yet one recovered while the other grew weaker each passing day. The invisible world of bacteria remained completely unknown. leaving even the most experienced craftsmen unable to explain these mysterious differences in recovery. Looking back today, the barber surgeon represents an important step in the long history of medicine. By treating countless injuries, observing results, and refining practical techniques, these craftsmen preserved valuable knowledge that later generations would continue to improve. Their work reminds us that medical progress often advances through experience as well as scientific discovery, with each generation building upon the efforts of those who came before. As the barber surgeon closes his workshop for the evening, the sound of sharpening blades slowly fades into silence. Behind him remain grateful patients, healing wounds, and lessons learned through another demanding day. Our peaceful journey now leaves the busy streets behind and enters a very different place, the medieval hospital, where faith, charity, and medicine came together in ways that may surprise us as we continue exploring the fascinating world of medieval healthcare. As our quiet journey continues, we now enter a medieval hospital. Do not imagine a modern building filled with bright lights and advanced equipment. Instead, picture a peaceful stone hall lit by candles, where rows of simple wooden beds stood beneath high ceilings. The air carried the scent of herbs and burning wax, while monks and nuns moved quietly between patients, offering food, clean water, prayers, and whatever comfort they could provide to the sick and weary. Many medieval hospitals were founded by churches or monasteries rather than governments. Their purpose extended beyond medicine alone. They cared for the poor, welcomed travelers, sheltered the elderly, and comforted the dying. Healing the body remained important, but caring for the soul was considered equally essential. Compassion, charity, and faith shaped everyday life inside these institutions, making them places of refuge during difficult times. Patients entered the hospital carrying many different illnesses and injuries. Some arrived with infected wounds from farming accidents, while others suffered from fever, exhaustion, or diseases that doctors could barely understand. Beds were often placed close together inside large shared rooms, allowing caregivers to watch over many people at once. Although space was limited, every patient received attention according to the hospital's resources and religious traditions. Daily life inside the hospital followed a calm and predictable rhythm. Morning prayers were followed by simple meals, quiet conversation, and gentle care for the sick. Caregivers changed bandages, prepared herbal remedies, and offered reassurance to frightened patients. The peaceful routine brought comfort during uncertain times, even though the medical treatments available remained far less effective than those found in hospitals today. Cleanliness was valued, yet medieval hospitals lacked an understanding of germs and infection. Floors were swept, fresh straw was replaced, and linens were washed whenever possible, but invisible bacteria remained completely unknown. Caregivers believed unpleasant smells caused disease, not microscopic organisms. Even with these limitations, many hospitals represented the safest and most compassionate places available for people seeking care during the Middle Ages. Monks and nuns formed the heart of many medieval hospitals. Their daily duties included preparing meals, washing patients, changing simple bandages, and offering gentle words of comfort. They often worked from sunrise until late evening, believing that caring for the sick was both a charitable duty and an act of faith. Their compassion could not cure every illness, but it brought dignity and hope to people facing uncertain futures. Food played an important role in recovery. Patients usually received simple meals of bread, vegetable soup, porridge, cheese, and watered ale. Fresh fruit or meat was offered when supplies allowed. Caregivers believed nourishing the body helped restore strength, even though they did not understand vitamins or modern nutrition. For many poor people, The hospital provided more regular meals than they received in everyday life. Silence was encouraged inside many hospital wards. Loud conversation and unnecessary noise were discouraged so patients could rest without disturbance. The quiet atmosphere was broken only by soft footsteps, whispered prayers, and the gentle sounds of caregivers moving between beds. This peaceful environment reflected the belief that both body and spirit healed more easily in calm surroundings, a principle that still feels familiar today. Despite the peaceful atmosphere, infectious diseases could spread quickly. Patients suffering from different illnesses often shared the same room, with little understanding of how infection passed from one person to another. Caregivers did their best to maintain cleanliness, yet the absence of scientific knowledge limited what they could achieve. A hospital offered hope, but it also carried risks that neither doctors nor patients fully understood. For many people, entering a medieval hospital meant placing complete trust in strangers. Caregivers offered shelter, food, medicine, and constant attention while families waited anxiously for signs of recovery. Some patients gradually regained their strength and returned home, while others never left the quiet stone walls. Every bed held its own story, reminding us that hope and uncertainty existed side by side throughout the medieval world. For many patients, a medieval hospital offered something just as valuable as medicine: kindness. Caregivers spoke gently, helped those too weak to eat, and remained beside the sick during long nights. While their treatments could not cure every illness, their presence eased fear and loneliness. In a world where disease often arrived without warning, simple acts of compassion became an important part of healing, offering comfort when medical knowledge alone could not. Hospital chapels stood at the heart of many medieval institutions. Patients gathered for prayers whenever their strength allowed, while those too weak to leave their beds listened as clergy offered blessings nearby. Faith was considered an essential part of recovery, bringing hope during uncertain days. Many believed that healing depended not only upon medicine, but also upon spiritual peace, making prayer a daily part of hospital life throughout medieval Europe. Space inside medieval hospitals was often limited, especially during outbreaks of disease or times of famine. Caregivers worked tirelessly to provide beds, blankets, and food for everyone seeking help, yet resources sometimes ran short. Patients shared rooms, meals, and quiet conversations while waiting for recovery. Even under these difficult conditions, hospitals remained places where generosity and community offered comfort to people facing illness and uncertainty. Not everyone who entered a medieval hospital expected to recover. Some patients arrived knowing their illness had become too severe to cure. For them, caregivers focused on relieving discomfort, offering companionship, and ensuring they were not left alone during their final days. This gentle approach reflected a belief that dignity and compassion remained important, even when medicine could no longer change the outcome of the illness. As evening settled over the stone walls, candles flickered softly beside rows of resting patients. Caregivers completed their final rounds, whispered quiet prayers, and prepared for another long night of service. The hospital became a place where hope, faith, and human kindness existed together despite the limits of medieval medicine. In our next chapter, we will explore how the arrival of the Black Death transformed hospitals, doctors, and the lives of millions across Europe forever. Medicine inside medieval hospitals relied as much on observation as treatment. Caregivers carefully watched changes in a patient's breathing, appetite, strength, and sleep, hoping these signs revealed whether recovery had begun. Without laboratory tests or modern equipment, every decision depended upon experience and patience. Even the smallest improvement, a stronger voice or a better appetite, was welcomed as a hopeful sign that the body was slowly regaining its strength. Hospitals also became places where medical knowledge quietly passed from one generation to the next. Younger helpers observed experienced caregivers preparing herbal remedies, cleaning wounds, and comforting anxious patients. These practical lessons were remembered through daily work rather than written instructions alone. Although limited by the science of the age, this shared experience helped preserve valuable skills that would continue serving communities for many centuries. Many hospitals welcomed travelers who became sick far from home. Merchants, pilgrims, and wandering laborers found shelter within their walls when illness interrupted their journeys. Far from their families, these strangers depended entirely upon the kindness of caregivers they had never met before. In a world where travel was slow and dangerous, the hospital offered safety, warmth, and the reassurance that no one needed to face suffering completely alone. Looking back today, medieval hospitals appear very different from modern medical centers. Yet they represented an important step in the long history of organized healthcare. They brought together shelter, food, nursing, and medical treatment under one roof, creating places where compassion became part of healing. Although scientific knowledge remained limited, these institutions reflected humanity's enduring commitment to caring for the sick with dignity and generosity. As the final candles burn low and silence settles across the hospital ward, our peaceful visit comes to an end. Behind these stone walls, hope lived beside uncertainty, and compassion often accomplished what medicine could not. In the next chapter, we will witness the arrival of one of history's greatest disasters, the Black Death, and discover how this devastating plague overwhelmed medieval doctors, transformed hospitals, and forever changed the course of European medicine. As our quiet journey continues, a dark shadow slowly falls across medieval Europe. In the middle of the 14th century, a deadly disease began spreading from town to town with terrifying speed. Families watched healthy neighbors become gravely ill within days, while doctors searched desperately for answers they could not find. This devastating epidemic became known as the Black Death, forever changing medicine, society, and the lives of millions across the continent. Today, historians know the Black Death was largely caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, carried by fleas living on black rats that traveled aboard merchant ships. Medieval people, however, had no knowledge of bacteria or disease-carrying insects. They searched for explanations in bad air, unusual weather, divine punishment, or the movement of the stars. Without understanding the true cause, preventing the plague became almost impossible. The first symptoms often appeared suddenly. Patients developed high fevers, weakness, painful swellings called buboes beneath the arms or around the neck, and dark patches upon the skin caused by internal bleeding. Many who became ill died within only a few days. The speed of the disease frightened entire communities, leaving doctors powerless as hospitals filled faster than caregivers could possibly respond. Physicians tried every treatment they knew: bloodletting, herbal mixtures, aromatic smoke, prayers, and special diets were all prescribed with sincere hope. Some people carried fragrant flowers to protect themselves from what they believed was poisoned air, while others remained indoors for weeks. Despite these efforts, the plague continued spreading relentlessly, because its true cause remained completely invisible to everyone living at the time. As the disease reached city after city, ordinary life slowly began to disappear. Markets grew quieter, churches filled with frightened worshippers, and roads emptied as families avoided unnecessary travel. Fear spread almost as quickly as the illness itself. For medieval doctors, the Black Death became the greatest challenge they had ever faced. exposing the painful limits of medical knowledge and changing European history forever. Hospitals quickly became overwhelmed as the number of patients increased beyond anything caregivers had ever experienced. Beds filled within days always became crowded, and many of the sick had to lie on simple blankets spread across stone floors. Monks, nuns, and physicians worked tirelessly from dawn until nightfall. Yet every sunrise brought more suffering than the day before. Compassion remained strong, but the plague spread faster than any hospital could respond. Fear changed the behavior of entire communities. Some families locked themselves inside their homes, hoping isolation would keep the disease away. Others fled into the countryside, leaving crowded towns behind in search of safety. Sadly, many unknowingly carried the infection with them, allowing the plague to reach villages that had previously escaped. Without understanding how disease truly spread, every attempt to avoid danger often created new opportunities for the epidemic. Doctors wore no protective clothing because they did not know that invisible bacteria caused infection. They examined patients with their hands, shared the same rooms, and breathed the same air, believing foul smells rather than microscopic organisms carried disease. Many physicians became sick while caring for others, and countless caregivers lost their own lives through their extraordinary dedication. Their courage remained remarkable, even though their understanding of the plague was. Church bells rang more often than ever before as communities gathered to mourn neighbors, friends, and family members. Cemeteries expanded rapidly, while workers struggled to bury the growing number of victims with dignity. The constant presence of loss left deep emotional scars across medieval Europe. For those who survived, everyday life would never feel quite the same again, as the memory of the plague remained with them for the rest of their lives. Yet the Black Death also transformed the future of medicine, as physicians witnessed familiar treatments fail again and again. Some slowly began questioning long-accepted beliefs that had guided healthcare for centuries. Although real scientific progress would come much later, this devastating epidemic exposed the limits of medieval medicine and encouraged future generations to search for better explanations, laying the first foundations for a more evidence-based understanding of disease. Many physicians remained at their patients' bedsides despite knowing the danger they faced. They visited crowded homes, examined the sick, and offered every treatment they believed might help. Some never returned to their own families, although their understanding of disease was limited. Their willingness to care for others during the plague revealed remarkable courage. Their dedication became one of the few sources of comfort in an age filled with fear and uncertainty. The plague changed everyday life in ways few people had imagined. Busy marketplaces grew quiet, schools closed, and many workshops stood empty as illness spread through towns. Farmers struggled to harvest crops, merchants delayed their journeys, and familiar routines disappeared almost overnight. The disease affected not only health, but also work, trade, and family life, leaving lasting changes that continued long after the worst outbreaks had finally passed. Communities searched desperately for explanations. Some believed unusual weather had poisoned the air, while others thought the alignment of planets had disturbed nature itself. Religious processions became more common as people prayed for relief and forgiveness. Without knowledge of bacteria or fleas, these ideas seemed reasonable to many. They reflected humanity's natural desire to understand a disaster that appeared to arrive without warning and spared almost no community. Not every town experienced the plague in exactly the same way. Some communities lost a large part of their population within a few months, while others escaped with far fewer deaths. Differences in trade routes, travel, population density, and simple chance all influenced the spread of the disease. To medieval people, however, These patterns seemed mysterious, making the plague feel even more unpredictable and frightening than it already was. As the worst years of the Black Death slowly passed, Europe emerged profoundly changed. Families mourned loved ones, villages rebuilt their lives, and physicians quietly reflected upon treatments that had failed. Although many old beliefs survived, the plague encouraged future generations to observe disease more carefully and question long-accepted ideas. In our next chapter, we will explore how these painful lessons gradually shaped the early foundations of more scientific medicine. The Black Death eventually slowed, but its memory remained alive for generations. Survivors carried stories of empty streets, silent church bells, and families forever changed by loss. Children grew up hearing these accounts from parents and grandparents, ensuring the plague would never be forgotten. Even after life slowly returned to normal, the emotional wounds remained, shaping how medieval people viewed illness, death, and the fragile nature of everyday life. One lasting result of the plague was a growing desire to understand disease more carefully. Physicians began recording their observations in greater detail, comparing symptoms and outcomes instead of relying only on ancient authorities. Progress remained slow, yet curiosity steadily increased. The Black Death reminded many scholars that accepted ideas could fail, encouraging future generations to observe nature more closely and search for better medical explanations. The epidemic also changed the relationship between communities and healthcare. Towns became more aware of the importance of caring for the sick, supporting hospitals, and responding quickly when illness appeared. Although these efforts were still limited by medieval knowledge, they reflected valuable lessons learned through tragedy. The plague encouraged societies to think more seriously about public health long before modern medicine fully developed. Today, historians view the Black Death as one of history's greatest turning points. It exposed the limits of medieval medicine, transformed European society, and inspired slow but meaningful changes in medical thinking. While countless lives were lost, the questions raised by the epidemic eventually helped open the path towards scientific observation, better healthcare, and a deeper understanding of how diseases truly spread. As our peaceful journey through the age of plague comes to a close, the silence that followed reminds us of both humanity's vulnerability and its resilience. Medieval doctors did everything they believed could help, yet knowledge alone was not enough to defeat such a devastating disease. In our final chapter, we will discover how these difficult centuries gradually paved the way for the medical discoveries that transformed the world and continue protecting lives today. As the years passed after the Black Death, Europe slowly entered a period of quiet reflection. Physicians, scholars, and caregivers began asking difficult questions that earlier generations had rarely considered. Why had familiar treatments failed? Could ancient medical books contain mistakes? These questions did not produce immediate answers, but they marked the beginning of a gradual change. Curiosity, once overshadowed by tradition, slowly became an important part of medical learning. Medical schools continued teaching the writings of ancient authorities, yet some students began comparing those texts with their own observations. They noticed that patients sometimes recovered despite receiving no treatment, while others died after every accepted remedy had been tried. These experiences encouraged careful thinking rather than blind acceptance. Although tradition still held great influence, observation gradually earned a more respected place within medical education. Hospitals also evolved slowly during the centuries that followed. Some became better organized, separating patients according to their illnesses whenever space allowed. Caregivers paid closer attention to cleanliness, fresh bedding, and regular meals, even though they still did not understand bacteria. These practical improvements often made patients more comfortable and occasionally increased their chances of recovery, proving that careful care could matter as much as medicine itself. Trade and travel connected European scholars with new medical knowledge arriving from distant regions. Books translated from Arabic and Greek introduced fresh ideas about anatomy, surgery, and herbal medicine. Physicians eagerly copied these manuscripts by hand, sharing them across universities and monasteries. Each new text expanded the understanding of the human body, gradually encouraging doctors to compare old beliefs with newly discovered information. The transformation of medicine happened slowly rather than suddenly. No single discovery changed everything overnight. Instead, each generation added a small piece of knowledge to the work left behind by those before them. Through careful observation, practical experience, and a growing willingness to question long-held traditions, medieval medicine quietly began its journey toward the scientific methods that would eventually reshape healthcare throughout the world. Anatomy slowly became a subject of growing interest among scholars. Instead of relying only on ancient descriptions, some physicians wanted to understand the human body through careful observation. Although opportunities remained limited, this curiosity encouraged a more accurate view of bones, muscles, and organs. Each new discovery challenged older beliefs and inspired future doctors to seek knowledge through evidence rather than tradition alone. Surgery also advanced through experience. Skilled surgeons carefully recorded which techniques reduced bleeding, protected wounds, or improved healing. Their knowledge spread from master to apprentice through years of practical training. While these improvements were modest, they gradually made certain procedures safer than before. Step by step, experience began shaping medicine alongside the teachings found in ancient medical manuscripts. New instruments appeared as skilled blacksmiths and metalworkers craft finer knives, stronger forceps, and more precise surgical tools. Better craftsmanship allowed surgeons to work with greater confidence and accuracy during difficult procedures. Although these instruments could not eliminate pain or infection, they reflected the steady progress of medieval technology and its growing influence on the practice of medicine throughout Europe. Universities became increasingly important in training future physicians. Students attended lectures, copied handwritten texts, and debated medical theories with their teachers. Learning remained centered on respected authorities, yet careful observation slowly gained greater value. These academic communities preserved knowledge from earlier centuries while preparing the foundation for discoveries that would eventually transform medicine during the Renaissance. Looking back across the Middle Ages, we can see that progress rarely arrived through dramatic breakthroughs. Instead, countless small improvements slowly changed the way physicians observed illness, treated injuries, and cared for patients. Each generation inherited the successes and mistakes of those before them, moving medicine one careful step closer to a future guided by evidence, discovery, and a deeper understanding of the human body. Books became one of the greatest tools for preserving medical knowledge. Before the printing press, every medical manuscript had to be copied carefully by hand. Monks, scholars, and students spent countless hours reproducing valuable texts so future generations could continue learning. Although copying sometimes introduced small mistakes, these manuscripts protected centuries of medical experience and ensured important ideas survived through changing times. Physicians gradually placed greater value on careful observation, rather than relying only upon accepted theories. Some began comparing patients with similar illnesses and recording differences in their symptoms. These simple notes encouraged a more thoughtful approach to diagnosis. While still far from modern science, this growing habit of observing real patients marked an important step toward evidence-based medicine in the centuries that followed. Medical progress also depended upon cooperation. Physicians, surgeons, barber surgeons, and apothecaries each contributed different skills to patient care. Although they did not always agree with one another, their combined experience slowly improved treatment over time. Knowledge passed through conversations, apprenticeships, and handwritten notes, allowing practical discoveries to spread beyond a single town or hospital and benefit wider communities. The greatest lesson learned from medieval medicine was the importance of questioning accepted ideas. Traditions that had remained unchanged for centuries were gradually examined more carefully as experience revealed their weaknesses. This willingness to ask new questions became the foundation of future scientific discovery. True progress began not with perfect answers, but with the courage to admit that earlier explanations might not always be correct. As this chapter quietly draws to a close, we can see that meaningful change rarely arrives all at once. It grows through patience, observation, and generations of people determined to understand the world a little better than those before them. These small advances prepared Europe for remarkable discoveries that would reshape medicine forever. In our final chapter, we will reflect on the lasting legacy of medieval medicine and the lessons it still offers today. The Renaissance gradually encouraged physicians to look beyond tradition and study nature more closely. Artists and scholars became interested in the structure of the human body, inspiring doctors to question ideas that had remained unchanged for centuries. This growing curiosity did not replace medieval medicine overnight, but it opened new paths toward observation, discovery, and a deeper understanding of human health. The invention of the printing press transformed medical learning in remarkable ways. Books that once existed in only a few handwritten copies could now reach far more students and physicians. New discoveries spread across Europe faster than ever before, allowing doctors in distant cities to learn from one another. This exchange of knowledge became an important step toward improving medical practice throughout the continent. Even as medicine advanced, many useful traditions from the medieval world remained. Compassionate nursing, careful observation of patients, and the importance of providing food, shelter, and comfort continue to shape healthcare. These simple practices reminded future generations that successful healing depends not only upon scientific knowledge, but also upon patience, kindness, and respect for every individual seeking care. When we study medieval medicine today, we see both remarkable determination and understandable mistakes. Physicians worked with the best knowledge available to them, often risking their own safety while caring for others. Although many treatments proved ineffective, their efforts helped preserve valuable experience that later generations would refine through research and scientific discovery, creating the foundation of modern medicine. As our quiet journey through medieval medicine comes to its final moments, we leave with a deeper appreciation for those who searched for healing in an age of uncertainty. Their successes, failures, and endless curiosity became part of a story that continues today. Thank you for traveling gently through history with me. Until our next peaceful journey, may your evening remain calm, your thoughts grow lighter, and your rest be peaceful. As our journey nears its peaceful conclusion, we pause to reflect upon the remarkable legacy left by medieval medicine. Although many treatments now seem ineffective or even dangerous, they represented humanity's sincere effort to understand illness with the knowledge available at the time. Every physician, surgeon, monk, and caregiver contributed small pieces to a much larger story, one that would eventually lead future generations towards safer and more effective medical care. The greatest lesson from medieval medicine is not found in its mistakes, but in its determination to keep searching for answers. Physicians continued observing patients, recording unusual illnesses, and sharing knowledge despite repeated failures. Their willingness to learn from experience became an essential foundation for later scientific discoveries. Progress rarely comes through perfection. It grows through curiosity, persistence, and the courage to question yesterday's beliefs. Many traditions born during the Middle Ages still influence healthcare today. Hospitals remain places of care and compassion. Nurses continue providing comfort alongside treatment, and physicians still rely upon careful observation before making important decisions. While modern medicine has advanced far beyond medieval understanding, the human desire to heal, comfort, and protect others has remained remarkably constant throughout the centuries. Looking back across these centuries also reminds us to approach history with understanding rather than judgment. Medieval doctors worked without microscopes, antibiotics, anesthesia, or modern scientific knowledge. They made difficult decisions using the best information they possessed. Instead of laughing at their mistakes, we can appreciate their determination, recognizing that future generations may one day view some of our own medical practices with similar curiosity. As the evening grows quieter and our final moments together approach, the story of medieval medicine becomes more than a history of diseases and treatments. It becomes a story of hope, resilience, compassion, and humanity's endless search for knowledge. Every success and every failure helped shape the medical world we know today, reminding us that progress is often built one careful step at a time across many generations. The story of medieval medicine reminds us that knowledge is never complete. Every generation inherits the discoveries of those who came before, then its new understanding through observation and research. What once seemed certain may later be revised, while new ideas gradually replace older beliefs. This continuous search for truth has shaped medicine for centuries and remains one of humanity's greatest achievements. Modern hospitals, advanced surgery, and life-saving medicines did not appear overnight. They were built upon countless years of experience, careful observation, and lessons learned through both success and failure. Medieval caregivers could never have imagined today's medical technology, yet their determination to relieve suffering became part of the long path that eventually led to the remarkable healthcare available in much of the world today. Perhaps the greatest strength shared by every generation of healers has been compassion. Whether caring for a wounded farmer, comforting a frightened child, or sitting beside a patient through a long night, kindness has always remained an essential part of medicine. Scientific knowledge continues to grow, but the simple human act of caring for another person remains just as valuable today as it was many centuries ago. As historians study medieval medicine, they discover more than unusual remedies or forgotten treatments. They uncover stories of perseverance, curiosity, sacrifice, and hope. These stories remind us that every advance in science began with people willing to ask difficult questions and search patiently for better answers. The history of medicine is, above all, the history of humanity's refusal to stop learning. As our peaceful journey gently reaches its end, the sounds of busy medieval streets fade into silence once more. The forge grows quiet, hospital candles burn low, and the footsteps of physicians disappear into history. Thank you for sharing this calm journey through the Middle Ages. May these stories leave you with a deeper appreciation for the past, a peaceful mind, and a restful night's sleep. Even today, museums across Europe carefully preserve medieval surgical tools, handwritten medical books, and hospital records. These quiet artifacts remind us how far medicine has progressed over the centuries. Every worn instrument and faded manuscript tells the story of people who searched for healing with limited knowledge, but remarkable determination. They remain lasting symbols of humanity's endless desire to understand the mysteries of illness and recovery. Medical history teaches us that every discovery rests upon the efforts of countless people whose names have long been forgotten. Physicians, nurses, monks, herbalists, and ordinary caregivers each contributed in their own way. Few became famous, yet together they shaped the gradual progress of healthcare. Their quiet work reminds us that lasting change is often created through small acts repeated faithfully across many generations. The Middle Ages are often remembered for hardship and disease, yet they also reveal remarkable resilience. Communities cared for the sick, families supported one another, and healers continued their work despite limited resources and uncertain outcomes. Their determination reminds us that hope can survive even during the most difficult times, becoming a source of strength when knowledge alone cannot provide every answer. History also encourages humility. Many medieval beliefs were eventually replaced by better scientific understanding. Just as modern medicine continues to evolve today, each generation learns something new while correcting earlier mistakes. This steady process of improvement reminds us that knowledge is always growing, and the willingness to learn remains one of humanity's greatest strengths. As our gentle exploration of medieval medicine draws closer to its final moments, we are left with more than facts about doctors and diseases. We leave with a deeper appreciation for human curiosity, compassion, and perseverance. These timeless qualities connected people across centuries and continue guiding medicine today, reminding us that every step forward began with someone determined to seek a better way. When we compare medieval medicine with modern healthcare, the differences seem extraordinary. Today's doctors rely upon microscopes, medical imaging, antibiotics, vaccines, and advanced surgical techniques that people of the Middle Ages could never have imagined. Yet both worlds share one timeless goal: to reduce suffering and protect life. Across the centuries, that simple purpose has remained unchanged, connecting every generation of healers through a common human mission. The story of medieval medicine reminds us that progress is rarely quick or effortless. Every generation inherited unanswered questions, tested new ideas, and slowly expanded humanity's understanding of disease and healing. Many discoveries came only after countless failures and difficult lessons. Looking back, we see that the path toward modern medicine was built through patience, observation, and the determination to continue learning despite uncertainty. Perhaps the most enduring legacy of medieval healthcare is its reminder that compassion cannot be replaced by technology. Advanced medicine saves lives, but kindness, reassurance, and human presence remain equally meaningful to those facing illness. Whether offered by a monk in a stone hospital or a modern nurse in a busy clinic, genuine care has always been one of the greatest medicines a patient can receive. Our journey through medieval medicine has taken us from humble herbal remedies and crowded hospitals to terrifying epidemics and the slow birth of scientific thinking. Along the way, we discovered not only unusual treatments but also stories of resilience, curiosity, and hope. These experiences shaped the future in ways few medieval physicians could have imagined, leaving a legacy that still influences healthcare around the world today. As the final candle quietly fades and our journey comes to its peaceful end, let the sounds of medieval Europe gently disappear into the distance. The forge grows silent, the hospital rests, and the footsteps of physicians fade into history. Thank you for sharing this calm exploration of the past. May these stories bring you comfort, quiet reflection, and a restful night's sleep, until we meet again on another journey through history. As our long journey through medieval medicine gently continues, Let us pause one final time and quietly reflect upon everything we have discovered together. We have walked through crowded villages, smoky workshops, humble hospitals, and silent monasteries, meeting people who faced illness with courage, despite knowing so little about the hidden causes of disease. Their world was uncertain, yet their determination to care for one another never truly disappeared. It is easy to remember medieval medicine for its strange remedies or painful operations. Yet those dramatic moments tell only part of the story. Behind every treatment stood ordinary people hoping to ease suffering with the knowledge available to them. They observed carefully, learned through experience, and passed their understanding to the next generation. Even imperfect knowledge became valuable when shared with patience, honesty, and compassion. Across medieval Europe, countless healers spent their lives helping neighbors they would never become famous for treating. Their names have disappeared from history, but their quiet acts of kindness remain part of medicine's larger story. Whether preparing herbs, changing bandages, comforting frightened families, or simply sitting beside a sick patient through the night, they demonstrated that healing has always depended upon both knowledge and humanity. History often remembers kings, battles, and great inventions, yet the daily work of caring for the sick shaped countless lives in quieter ways. Every healed wound, every comforting word, and every careful observation helped strengthen communities facing hardship together. These small moments rarely appeared in official records, but they formed the foundation of trust that allowed medieval society to endure difficult centuries. Perhaps the greatest lesson from our journey is that progress begins with curiosity. Every generation inherited questions left unanswered by those before them, and searched patiently for better explanations. Step by step, observation replaced assumption, evidence challenged tradition, and understanding slowly expanded. The remarkable advances of modern medicine began not with certainty, but with people who refused to stop asking thoughtful questions about the world around them. Imagine the quiet evening settling over a medieval village after a long day. The blacksmith's forge has fallen silent, the monastery bells have stopped ringing, and the hospital candles burn softly beside resting patients. Life continues at a slower pace as families gather inside warm homes. In these peaceful moments, we are reminded that history is not only shaped by great events, but also by the ordinary lives of countless forgotten people. The people of the Middle Ages never imagined the extraordinary medical discoveries that would one day transform the world. They could not foresee antibiotics, vaccines, or painless surgery. Yet their careful observations, practical experience, and determination to understand illness became small but essential steps along a much longer journey. Every generation quietly added another stone to the foundation upon which modern medicine now stands. As we reflect upon their lives, it becomes easier to appreciate both their strengths and their limitations. Medieval healers made mistakes because they lacked scientific knowledge, not because they lacked compassion. They worked with patience, courage, and sincere hope, often placing themselves at risk while caring for others. Their humanity deserves remembrance just as much as the discoveries that later replaced many of their beliefs. History encourages us to see progress as a continuous journey rather than a single moment of discovery. Each century inherited lessons from those before it, correcting old ideas while uncovering new truths. Medicine grew stronger through observation, curiosity, and countless acts of perseverance. The story we have explored reminds us that every improvement, no matter how small, can shape the future in ways no one can fully predict. As the night grows quieter, let your thoughts drift gently through the peaceful streets of medieval Europe one final time. The day's work has ended, the hospital rests in silence, and the stars shine above ancient rooftops just as they did centuries ago. Thank you for sharing this calm journey through history. May these stories leave your mind at peace and guide you toward a quiet, restful sleep. Looking back across the centuries, we discover that medicine has always been a story of learning rather than perfection. Every generation inherited unanswered questions, tested new ideas, and slowly expanded human understanding. Some beliefs disappeared, while others became the foundation of future discoveries. This steady pursuit of knowledge reminds us that true progress grows patiently, one careful observation and one thoughtful question at a time. Behind every medieval hospital, village clinic, and monastery stood ordinary people whose quiet service rarely appeared in history books. They prepared meals, gathered herbs, cleaned wounds, comforted frightened families, and remained beside the sick through long nights. Their names may have faded from memory, but their compassion became part of a tradition of care that continues to inspire healthcare around the world today. The greatest strength of medieval medicine was not its treatments, but its determination to keep helping despite uncertainty. Physicians, surgeons, and caregivers understood that many patients could not be cured. Yet they continued offering comfort, hope, and practical support whenever possible. Their perseverance reminds us that healing is measured not only by successful cures, but also by the kindness shown during moments of suffering. As our journey slows toward its final destination, the busy streets, quiet hospitals, and peaceful monasteries of medieval Europe begin to fade into the distance. Their stories remain with us, not because every medical idea proved correct, but because they reveal humanity's enduring desire to understand illness, reduce suffering, and protect one another through knowledge, courage, and compassion. Soon our exploration of medieval medicine will gently come to its conclusion. Before we leave this remarkable world behind, take one final quiet moment to appreciate the generations of forgotten healers whose patience, curiosity, and resilience helped shape the future. Though separated from us by many centuries, their search for better answers continues to echo through every hospital, clinic, and medical classroom in the modern world. The history of medieval medicine reminds us that wisdom often grows through patience rather than sudden discovery. Every small improvement, every careful observation, and every lesson learned from failure became part of a much larger story. Although those early healers could never imagine the medical world we know today, their willingness to continue learning helped create the foundation upon which generations of physicians would continue building for centuries to come. As we quietly leave the hospitals, workshops, and monasteries behind, we can almost hear the gentle echoes of lives once lived with courage and quiet determination. The physicians, barber surgeons, monks, and caregivers we have met were ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges. Their knowledge was limited, yet their desire to reduce suffering remained constant, reminding us that compassion has always stood at the very heart of medicine. Perhaps the greatest gift history offers is perspective. Looking back across these centuries allows us to appreciate not only how much medicine has advanced, but also how every generation contributed something valuable. Progress did not belong to one brilliant individual alone. It was created by thousands of forgotten hands, thoughtful minds, and caring hearts working patiently over hundreds of years toward a better understanding of human health. Tonight's journey has shown us a world where science was still young, yet hope remained remarkably strong. We walked beside frightened patients, determined healers, and communities united by compassion during difficult times. Their story reminds us that knowledge may evolve with every century, but kindness, resilience, and the desire to help others remain timeless qualities that continue connecting humanity across every generation. Now, as the final candle gently fades and the medieval world slowly disappears into the quiet darkness, let your thoughts become lighter and your breathing softer. Leave behind the sounds of the forge, the monastery bells, and the peaceful hospital halls. Thank you for sharing this long journey through history. May the stories you've heard tonight bring calm to your mind, comfort to your heart, and a peaceful, restful sleep until our next journey together. Our journey through medieval medicine has finally reached its quiet conclusion. Together, we have wandered through village streets, entered humble hospitals, stood beside skilled blacksmiths and barber surgeons, and witnessed both hope and heartbreak during one of history's most challenging ages. As the evening settles gently over the medieval landscape, let us pause once more and appreciate the resilience of ordinary people who faced uncertainty with remarkable courage and quiet determination. Imagine the final light of sunset disappearing beyond the rooftops of a peaceful medieval town. The forge has grown silent, the marketplace stands empty, and the monastery bells have finished their evening song. Inside warm homes, families gather around small fires while the last candles flicker softly in hospital halls. The busy world we explored throughout this journey slowly drifts into silence, leaving only calm memories behind. History often speaks through kings and great battles, yet its truest voice is found in ordinary lives. The healer preparing herbs, the caregiver changing bandages, the farmer recovering from injury, and the child waiting for a parent to return home all help shape the world in quiet ways. Though their names have been forgotten, their everyday struggles and kindness became part of the long story that connects the past with our own lives today. And readers, we know far more about disease than medieval physicians ever could. Yet knowledge alone has never been the whole story. Compassion, patience, and the willingness to care for another person remain just as important today as they were centuries ago. Across every generation, these timeless qualities have united healers everywhere, reminding us that medicine has always been as much about humanity as it is about science. Now our footsteps slowly fade from the cobbled streets, and the medieval world quietly disappears into the evening mist. Leave behind the sounds of busy workshops, peaceful monasteries, and gentle hospital halls. Thank you for sharing this long and restful journey through history. May these stories fill your imagination with quiet wonder, bring calm to your thoughts, and guide you gently toward a peaceful and refreshing night's sleep.